family Aliyah story. And before I actually start the movie, I will give my tips on how to best watch it, because I will be sharing my screen. Okay, and I did a trial with John beforehand, so I have tips to recommend how to watch it. Okay, thank you, Noah.
Yeah, sure. So actually, it can definitely be. I know I have only limited amount of time, but I would love to kind of share my story, my family story of kind of growing up in Israel as a Sephardic Jew, and kind of it's something that's very highlighted in the movie, and obviously, dozens of years had passed since this movie, and I think it's kind of an interesting perspective to talk to like a third generation. My family moved to Israel from North Africa 3 generations ago. I mean, both of my parents were born in Israel, so it's kind of interesting talking about that perspective, and from what you guys are going to see in the movie, and what remains until this very day, if what stayed. So I would love to kind of share around it, because I think it's very interesting, kind of because Israel is a melting pot at the end of the day, and so hi, my name is Noa Ohayon Bab. This is my second year of Shlichut, also here in Washington D.C. I actually work outside of Federation. I lead the group of Shlichim, and also work with Federation around every Israel engagement topic. And my last name is Ohayon. And my other last name is Bab. I married to Omer. Bab is actually, even though it sounds also from North Africa, it's actually German. So my kids are definitely exactly half-half in between Eastern Europe and us. And as I mentioned, Ohayon is very North African name. The ending of Yon, it's North African, and in the middle of Ohayon there is Chai. And actually, the component of Chai, it's a component of a last name that is very Jewish, and you have it everywhere. Vita, Videl, all those names are rooted from the same Chai, but moving to North Africa, it actually became Ohayon. I've learned that specific information from Beta Tfutzot. Netta, what's the name in English for Beta Tfutzot? Maybe you can Google it. It's kind of it's an institute in Israel that helps with the roots of Jewish ancestry wherever it is. And
Museum of the Jewish People.
Museum of the Jewish People, thank you, in Tel Aviv. And if you write them, this is, by the way, goes to everyone here on this call. If you write them, they have a very fast service where you write them with your last name, and they give you the kind of the whole history of it. And the also interesting part of kind of my family story is that I just recently got my results from the 23andMe, if you know that also service. It's a genetic service where you basically send a sample of your spit and they analyze it and kind of show your roots based on your DNA, and it's very, very cool. And so for me, it was amazing seeing the results, because the results basically showed that my ancestors from around the 1700s were very, very originally, like the furthest you can get is to like everyone, like basically Ashkenaz Jews. And afterwards, my family moved to Spain and Portugal and Italy. And this is, if I ask my mom, she wouldn't even know it. But basically through the DNA and like the study I've done around kind of my ancestry, and around the Spanish Inquisition, they actually moved to North Africa. And that's actually super interesting, because I just, like, last year was entitled to have a Portugal citizenship because of this whole story. And I just think it's really, really amazing how, those kind of fit into our stories, everyone's stories. But for kind of the last couple of decades, my family lived in North Africa and definitely brought into into our family many traditions. I mean, I don't speak nor Arabic or French, but my mom definitely understands. She's a younger sister. She has 10 siblings, and her older sister speaks fluently Arabic because her parents actually talk to her Arabic, and it's something you will also see in the movie and in other movies around those. You'll see that Jewish North African that moved to Israel, they spoke fluent Arabic. Their tradition is also very Arabic. So sometimes, there are some people like me that their family has a similar story, and they will introduce themselves as Arabic Jewish, Jewish Arab. And it's a very kind of interesting concept. I'm not going to go into that, but if you even think, kind of everything related to the conflict in Israel, in many ways, it kind of was something that even created this clash in between, most of local people, most of local Jews, they were in Israel when the new immigrants came from North Africa to Israel. So the fact that their culture was mostly Arab, and they were Arabic speakers, and because of the even the basic of the conflict, you can see kind of layers of kind of some would even use the word discriminations or kind of lots of bias. And obviously, as you go through the different decades, you see it less and less. And as I mentioned, I do believe that Israel is a good example of a melting pot. But I know that the first time that I asked my mom, I mean, what is my region, I'd say. And I think it was elementary school, maybe the second grade. And she kind of asked me, why do you ask? And I told her someone at school asked me. And she said, if someone asks you, tell them that you're Israeli. And for her, it was really important because she kind of, her childhood growing up, she was born in the 1960s in Israel, and Israel back then was still, a very young country. And her kind of experience of growing up was definitely layered with lots of misconceptions and kind of beliefs around North Africans' culture. And for her, she really wanted me to kind of, in a way, I think in some ways, she even wanted to kind of let go some of the traditions. For sure, languages, nor Arabic nor French. It was really important for her to kind of, speak only Hebrew, be very Israeli, what you call, and kind of leave that aside. And I think that for me in person, I kind of, regret missing those many aspects. And obviously, I got it from my extended family and my grandma and so on, like the food and even the smells and the spices. And the songs and the music. So I kind of I got it as in a diffused way, not in the direct channel, for example, not in the way that both me and my husband tell, our family stories and tradition with so much pride to our kids. And I think that my mom's story kind of, for her, it was really important for us to be totally Israeli and kind of not share too much of, our family story. And for me in person, it's something, as you see, I deep dived into it because I think it is the wider story of our Jewish story, of our unified Jewish story, and I actually take much pride of it. And I don't know if we're gonna have time for a question, but a question I get asked a lot from American jury is like, did I ever felt, anything held against me or any bias around my identity, my North African identity? And way, my family came mostly from Morocco. And so, generally speaking, I would say we're definitely, a self-made family, and me for sure. And so, I wouldn't say I felt it strongly, but I definitely, had an interview where I submit my resume, and I did get that job, but it was, I think, in 2006. And when I showed up to the interview, the interviewer said, she looked at me, she looked at the resume, and then she said, "Oh, you don't look like Ohayon." and she basically meant, you know, she wanted to say, oh, you don't look like North Africa, and you don't look like your family is from Morocco, and you know, this is like, we're in 2006. It's not it's not that we're talking on any elder years. And actually, studies in Israel also showed that if you submit a resume with a North African, like with a, you know, Sephardic name, you will get invited. You're less likely to be invited to an interview than other last names. So I think in many ways we're drifted away, because anyway, you know, Israel, especially as you know, as it's mixed and mixed and mixed. It's definitely drifted away, but I guess from for more older generation, it's something that you'll see more rooted, different beliefs, different kind of I don't know, again, misconceptions. And so I'm definitely open for questions. I know it was like all over, but I have, you know, so much to share with you guys, and I'm definitely passionate about it. And I'm sure that Netta and both Katya, that she's here, she's also a shlicha. If you find it interesting, we can definitely, you know, have more kind of gatherings around it, more sessions around kind of identity, and specifically this. And as I mentioned, I'm very proud of it, and everything around the culture. And I'm really into like poetry, and also books, and definitely everything around it. I think, you know, it brought to our Jewish culture many different aspects and knowledge. And so again, here for a question if we have time at that. I don't know.
So I want to respect people's time, and then because I know the movie is relatively long, so that's why if you have any, I wanted this to be an inspiration that basically we have somebody who exists in the DMV who has a story of her own family that made Aliyah and experienced the different generations and their culture and the change. So basically that's why I wanted to start with this. But if you have any questions, just put it in the chat and we'll address it at the end. And unfortunately, Noah's not going to stay to watch the movie with us, which is totally fine. But she's right here around the corner. So again, I can forward her the questions. Katya and I can try to answer the questions ourselves from knowing Israel, you know, culture, even though we are both very white. But again, this was the idea to just bring up the conversation and share a personal story, inspiration towards watching the movie. So thank you so much, Noa. I really appreciate you coming. And we're going to say goodbye right now. But again, if people have any questions that you'd want to address to Noa in response or as a result from the movie, she's here and she'll be able to answer the questions, even if it's in an email afterwards.
Definitely.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording right now, and then we're going to go to